Callouts. Glad to have you all here this fine Friday morning. All right, today we're going to start before the market even opens. Very range traded out right now, and so I think there's opportunity for sells and buys in both directions. When things get range tradey, right, there's opportunities for both directions. All right, versus here, to me, there's only opportunity for buys because this is not a range. Versus here, we're building up a range, and so there's opportunities for both directions. You just wait for support and resistance, all right? Or you wait for breaks of trends like we're seeing now, right? You saw in oil how there was that push up, and now we're failing. So there's kind of maybe an opportunity right now in oil, but again, you just got to be aware of headlines. You got to be aware that anything can be said at any time. All right, so maybe on this trade, if you trade oil, we could look for the back test up here to this trend line or to 61.84. There will likely be a back test. Again, not always, but I like the back test. All right, but right now this is kind of playing out. But let's go ahead and look at NASDAQ. And if you have any questions on oil, drop them in the chat. So the overnight session on NASDAQ and ES actually pulled down pretty significantly. Again, we got some Moody's news last Friday, and ultimately we did open up with a gap, but we did fill it. All right, and after the filling of the gap, we hit a major push down. All right, and we're back here into this zone. Again, I'm not treating it up here to 32.63, and gives us the potential, again, to reclaim this major low. If this reclaims, right, if we look at the longer term, this is the previous low where we had multiple failed breakdowns, and we had 2 actual breakdowns off of, right? So it would make logical sense that if we are going to continue in a downtrend, we need to come up and back test this, right? So meaning we come up to here, all right, and we back test. Now, if this reclaims, obviously very bullish if that reclaims. All right, I'm actually going to get rid of this because we're past that. We don't need it anymore. All right. So a reclaim of 32.75 to 32.83 would be extremely bullish to the upside. Now, it might be a place to get some points, too, in terms of a sell. I doubt it'll, unless there's some major news thing that pumps us right through it, right? Which I don't think there's any major news today. No, it's all Canadian, so it's nothing major. All right. So the entries are pretty clear here. Let's pull up the bands. Let's pull up the bands of the indicator so we can get an idea. All right, of where we are here. All right, so we got the upper band here, 32.48. Actually, a little bit lower here. We're there right now, a little bit lower than the high. So we're actually kind of in the realm for a potential A-book here. ES was a little bit closer than it was on NASDAQ, so we really would have had to break the lows here, which we did. All right. But ultimately, it started with the failure here of 21.419, which we spent this is where the failed breakdown zone was. So we got a couple takes of it, so a couple pops here and there. And we had a really good pop here, all right, with a little bit of level acceptance, but obviously did not create a new high here above 21.82. We would have needed to clear 21.482 in order to keep this going, but ultimately we failed it. All right, we did not create a new macro high, therefore came back down. I got a little bit of resistance, but where this really started going was when we saw the volume of this red candle, right? Because we saw some new highs being painted, or some new high, or some higher lows on candles, but then we saw this big engulfing candle. All right, so this just engulfed, all right, all of the buy orders that were in here, this candle right here. This started the downtrend, and it started here where we failed these lows, and then we failed this low, and that kept the downtrend going. Now, if you look at the pattern here, we actually got a failed breakdown. All right, again, vicious downtrends are oftentimes major downtrends are oftentimes followed by vicious squeezes. All right, we got this exact setup here. We got the exact pattern of a failed. We're not even in the realm of potential breakdown here. I wouldn't expect it. Can it happen? Yes, but I wouldn't expect it to happen. All right, so worst case scenario, since we know that the market is bullish, we know that we're in a a big uptrend with the reclaim. Again, gold's reclaimed every lower end zone now. Okay, the only thing we have to tell us that there's some resistance up here is this channel. We've already bust through this channel though, right? This channel is weak, so it can bust through. So that's a scenario where we kind of have to make the decision, and we'll have to see what price action does around the 3380s to see if we actually are interested in a short there. The other worst case scenario is that we just wait for a pullback, right, to some level of support. The first level of support, 3322, right? It might not even go that low. All right, but we wait for a pullback, or we just wait to see if we do bust through the 3380s again. We bust through the 3380s, and again, we give it some time. We let it back test, we let it resist around there for a minute, and then we see if we get a takeoff from there. All right, so those are the options on gold. I think today's it might be a little bit difficult to trade just because of the location for where we are right now. Okay, we're at the upper end of this, right? We're lagging up. We're at the upper end of this zone, right? We're at the upper end of this channel. All right, now we don't want to take a sell off the channel just for the sake of it coming off the channel, right? So there are some people that just trade purely supply and demand, or support and resistance. But again, that's just one area of confluence. So if we get some things line up, right? If we get resistance, we get price rejection at the 3380s, maybe even a stochastic cross back through the band. Right, we want a couple areas of confluence to tell us that the price is resisting. All right, but again, I don't like selling into strength. Okay, and so it is something where, especially on like ES, I find that since failed breakdowns are one of my key my key trades, right? Because I know that the market's only going to, especially on something like ES, the market's only going to move down for so long. All right. It's only going to move down for so long that I know that there's a high probability, and I know that there's going to be a squeeze. Right? I am more apt to be in buys than I am in sells. Right? So if there's no buys available, then we just don't take any trades. All right? We don't want to switch up the plan just to buy what's available.